Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the latest installment in the Virtual Access series from the Downtown Seattle Association. My name is Feliks Banel. Today we're going to go deep on some other downtowns of cities of similar size to Seattle, namely Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. As we'll learn, each of these places has its own distinct advantages and challenges, but we all have so much in common, and there's so much we can learn from each other as we all continue the work of revitalizing our downtowns. It is April 2024, which is great, but 4 years on, it's easy to forget that downtown Seattle was the first American urban center to experience the impacts of COVID-19, which meant a sudden downturn and a rapid intensifying of so many pre-existing challenges. As I often like to point out, there were many awful things about the pandemic that would have been so good to avoid entirely, but in the face of that adversity, there was a can-do spirit and a get-it-done mentality that emerged, not unlike the World War II home front, that made some good things happen very quickly and efficiently. That muscle memory of taking action is still there, I like to believe. If we also take into account some recent political shifts, it feels like we're making strides toward big progress on the things that we can actually control locally. If you haven't done so lately, take a look at DSA's monthly Downtown Revitalization Dashboard, which you can find at downtownseattle.org. Now we have a terrific panel this morning, so kudos to DSA staff for another great job lining up some great guests. From Denver, we have Kourtny Garrett, who joined the Downtown Denver Partnership as president and CEO in 2022. Prior to that, she spent nearly 20 years at Downtown Dallas Incorporated, the last 6 of which she served as president and CEO. She was named one of the 500 most powerful business leaders in Dallas. Kourtny is a fellow and honorary member of the Texas Society of Architects and the American Institute of Architects. From Philadelphia, we have Prema Gupta, who was promoted to president and CEO of Philadelphia's Center City District in January after serving for 4 years as vice president. She's also the executive director of the Central Philadelphia Development Corporation, membership organization focused on planning, policy, and research. Prema was previously senior vice president of the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation's Navy Yard for planning and real estate development. Also joining us will be Rodney Fong, who served as president and CEO of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce since 2019. He's also owner and president of a real estate company. And for nearly 30 years, he was the third generation owner and operator of the Wax Museum at Fisherman's Wharf. He's also held leadership roles on the San Francisco Planning Commission, the San Francisco Port Commission, the latter of which includes landmarks such as Fisherman's Wharf, Pier 39, and the Ferry Building in AT&T Park. We'll also be joined by the Markham McIntyre, who's the Office of Economic Development, the director of that here in Seattle. Now, before we get to our panel discussion, I'd like to invite Jared Axelrod, the Senior Manager of Public Policy for our sponsor, Amazon, to say a few words.
Great. Well, thank you, Felix, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Jared Axelrod. I lead public policy and community engagement here in Washington State for Amazon. Amazon is proud once again to partner with DSA as the presenting sponsor for these conversations focused on issues impacting downtown's revitalization. This is the first of 3 DSA Virtual Access events for the spring series. Today's conversation comes on the heels of last month's State of Downtown, during which DSA President and CEO John Scholes outlined areas in which we're trending in positive directions on downtown's revitalization, but also critical issues impeding further progress. It's no surprise to note that there are shared challenges and advancements in downtowns all over the nation, and I'm excited to hear from how urban leaders in Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco are approaching these circumstances and what we can learn from other markets. Now, more than a decade ago, Amazon made the conscious decision to build an urban campus in Seattle's downtown and help transform the entire neighborhood. We've long believed in the benefits of downtown offices for our employees, creating dense and connected urban campuses rather than isolated office parks in the suburbs. This approach helps us recruit great talent and stitch ourselves into the local community. And as DSA members, I know you all understand the importance of a healthy, vibrant downtown and the necessity for urban recovery. So with that, I'm excited to kick off our session today and to introduce a friend of mine and the director of Seattle's Office of Economic Development, Markham McIntyre, who will provide an update on Seattle's downtown activation plan. Markham, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jared. And thanks to DSA for having me. I always love talking about downtown, the downtown activation plan with such a great group of downtown champions. And I'll just echo Jared's interest in hearing from our colleagues and friends in Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. We really are all in this together. We're all trying to figure this out. It is a new era for downtowns. But this is what downtowns do, is they reinvent themselves time and time again. So it's a very exciting time, even though it can also feel like a very precarious time. Here in Seattle, downtown is the heart of our city, and we are at this critical moment where it's undergoing a metamorphosis. And it is this unique opportunity to kind of reimagine who downtown is for, and how we use its physical space, its physical beauty, to make it a wonderful gathering space, working space for residents, workers, visitors alike. For me at the Office of Economic Development, part of the reason it's so important is downtown is the economic engine for our city, our region, and our state. So there's no better economic development play than to get downtown humming again, which is why we're leading the mayor's downtown activation plan. Just a couple statistics about that. Downtown Seattle is responsible for approximately half of all the economic activity in Seattle. Right now, we're in this kind of residential growth. It's becoming more and more of a neighborhood where 1 in 10 Seattleites call downtown home. For us at the city, it's also our tax base that enables us to invest in our other neighborhoods and all the many things that our city needs as it continues to grow. It is also a unique part of our identity of how Seattleites see ourselves. Some of it is the iconic spaces like the Space Needle, but some of it's also just how it fosters a sense of belonging and welcoming for folks in the city and for visitors joining us here. So at its bottom, downtown is this complex space, and it means so much to so many different people, which is why we've developed this multifaceted downtown activation plan to try to reimagine it now and in the future. The fundamental purpose of the plan is to get more people back downtown. Downtown runs on people, and so that's the main objective. It's also the main way we're kind of measuring progress across so many different things. I'm going to quickly share a presentation just because I think it's a little bit easier to see some of these on slides. So give me 1 second. These are our 7 goals for the downtown activation plan. And I think it's important to note that making downtown safe and welcoming is our #1 goal. We hear this from businesses, from visitors, from residents, just the importance of making sure that it feels safe and welcoming. It's been a priority for the mayor since he's been elected. There's been some progress made, but we recognize that there is a lot more work to do to continue to make sure that downtown is safe and welcoming. I know that at the recent State of the Downtown, you've heard from the various chiefs from our public safety agencies, hearing about what they're working on, where they're focusing. So there's a lot of attention and activity going on there. But just want to communicate to all of you that even as we talk about some of these other aspects of downtown recovery, for the city, making downtown safe and welcoming is the #1 priority. I mentioned how we're trying to transform downtown into a neighborhood, thinking about how downtown is a unique retail experience, especially against some of the other retail spaces that we have across the city and across the region. Think about the future of work and where downtown is a place where people want to come to work, and it also reflects the future of our economy. Downtown currently is, but we can do more to make sure that it is the center of our arts, culture, sports, and entertainment. We've been doing a bang-up job with tourism. So Seattle is a top destination. We've been doing great with national and international visitors. Frankly, we have more to do with bringing some of our regional visitors back downtown. And then finally, because we are the Emerald City, creating a healthy, resilient, and green downtown. These are all interconnected and multidimensional. So it is a complex plan, but we think that's what downtown deserves, the full meal plan for trying to get it reactivated. It is a mix of near-term goals and longer-term goals. The mayor's deemed those longer-term goals Space Needle thinking. So what are those big transformative ideas that we could do for the future of downtown? But near term, we've really been focusing on filling vacant storefronts, beautifying downtown, and then amplifying some of the efforts from our partner organizations. We've done a great job filling vacant storefronts. We've got more work to do there, but here at the city, we run a program called Seattle Restored, where we connect entrepreneurs with vacant storefronts. We've actually been able to get 10 of those into long-term leases, so not just pop-ups, but really creating some stable retail spaces. You've probably seen some of the news about New Rising Sun and the Bumbershoot folks coming into the Bed Bath & Beyond space is really exciting. If we have any folks from Kleiss on the line, thank you for working on that. And then just yesterday, Renee Erickson announced a whole number of new restaurants and a brewery down in Pioneer Square. So each day we're kind of getting some better narrative around filling vacant storefronts and new businesses coming into those spaces. Beautifying downtown is something we partner a lot with DSA on. We've certainly been very supportive of the mid and getting more ambassadors out there. We've also been working on getting more murals and public art in downtown, trying to bring some more art downtown, which is just a great reason to come, but also it just makes everything feel more alive and interesting. Our Office of Arts and Culture has also been working at King Street Station to turn that into a youth arts hub. So there's all sorts of things happening in kind of the arts and culture space. Finally, on beautifying downtown, we've heard a lot. Everyone wants more illumination. So we've been hard at work trying to get lights into our parks. Hopefully you've seen down at City Hall Park, the lights going over there. We'll have more lights coming in parks across downtown. And I want to thank Expedia. They've been a funding partner in helping get some of those spaces illuminated. And then finally, our partners, we're trying to do this in a public-private partnership. It's not just a city effort. We built the plan in cooperation with DSA, the Chamber, many other organizations and businesses, and we're implementing it with them as well. So certainly thinking about how we talk about the Visit Seattle and their work with the convention center, all the work that the Sports Commission is doing, especially in advance of the World Cup. There's tons to celebrate, and we're just trying to make sure we're all an echo chamber for each other's success. One of the things that we've been really keen on is using policy as a lever for change in downtown. Again, not just kind of the near term, what's in our face, but really trying to set up downtown for the future. A lot of that's around, as we've mentioned, turning downtown into a neighborhood. So we've done some upzoning along 3rd Avenue and have been very creative about some of the incentives that we've offered there to try to also encourage educational facilities to be going in along 3rd. We've tried to reduce some of the barriers for other types of residential development to make it faster, make the permitting quicker, kind of get those into the pipeline. We did work with Visit Seattle on restructuring the beds and heads tax to try to increase their ability to promote travel and tourism here. And then we've certainly done some cleanup on some of our permitting for development downtown. And then we've got more coming. We've got some legislation in front of council right now around office to residential conversions, as well as increasing wayfinding downtown. So we're going to continue making progress on those 7 goals, but I really want to kind of highlight where we've landed for some of the priorities between now and World Cup, because that really should be our deadline for a lot of things around downtown. So we've really reorganized some of the city departments that are working on downtown activation to have that be the destination. And then these are the 4 priorities that we're really going to focus on between now and then. So improving that street level experience on 3rd. People are going to come into SeaTac. They're going to take light rail. Coming out on 3rd might be their first experience of Seattle and certainly of downtown. So those multimodal corridors at 3rd and Pike, 3rd and University, 3rd and James, and King Street Station are going to be critical to be thinking about what is that feeling that people get when they step out there. Those have also been some very kind of vexing areas for public safety and just activation generally. So having a real focus there is going to be important. SDOT is the lead department on that work, and they're working cooperatively with the DSA and Metro and Sound Transit on what that action plan looks like. Seattle Center is going to be leading our event activation. So all the events, festivals, activations that both kind of exercise our special events muscle, but also start building that momentum for World Cup. There's a number of public and private development projects happening all downtown. So kind of north of Holgate, south of Columbia, west to Pier 48 and east to Little Saigon. The city wants to kind of align, influence, and accelerate all those development projects so they knit together into compelling vision, largely around kind of residential development in South Downtown. And then finally, we know that we've got to improve public perception about downtown. We've got a great slate of things coming up this summer. DSA's got some fantastic events coming up. We're very excited about it, but we need to kind of change that narrative around downtown and get people really excited about it. And then finally, it's just more of what's working. Again, we've got a lot of momentum. The trajectory is great, but we need to kind of keep pushing and keep accelerating. So that's the quick update on downtown activation plan. As always, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd encourage you, if you want to stay up to date on all the great things going downtown, we publish a weekly newsletter called Good News Downtown. Just email me and I can get you signed up for that. Please continue to be a vocal champion of downtown. Tell your friends. Again, downtown runs on people, and as we've branded this, downtown is you. So you really do have a role to play. You as an individual can make a difference in helping reactivate downtown. With that, I'll turn it back to Feliks and look forward to hearing from our friends at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco.
All right. Thanks, Markham McIntyre from the Office of Economic Development, and thanks, Jared Axelrod from Amazon, and to Amazon for supporting this entire series. All right, that was great food for thought as we get into this conversation here. Now we have some questions we prepared in advance, and we'll get to audience questions as often as we can throughout the program. We won't wait till the end or anything. So if you see the chat function there on Zoom, feel free to type questions in there. We'll try to integrate them into the program where they make sense. I can't guarantee we'll answer all of them, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, before we begin these virtual access conversations, we always begin with what we call data points, just to kind of talk in very objective, factual terms here. Let's see. DSA's Downtown Revitalization Dashboard, which I mentioned earlier, notes that return of workers to downtown Seattle continues to climb. The most recent figures available for March 2024, that's last month, saw a daily average of nearly 88,000 workers downtown. That's the highest daily average since the start of the pandemic, of course, which we recently marked the 4th anniversary of, as I mentioned. Moody's Analytics reports a national office vacancy rate of 19.6. I believe this is for the year ending end of 2023. We'll note that here in Seattle, we come in at 17.4%. And using smartphone data to track activity, meaning general foot traffic, from March 2023 to February 2024, a recent University of Toronto study reports Philadelphia with an 18% increase in that traffic. Denver's up by 13.6%. Seattle's up at 7%. And San Francisco has a 21.6% decrease, which I'm sure we'll talk about during the program here. Finally, data point, the Seattle Mariners are 12-12 and playing 500 ball, which means they're a half a game back of the Texas Rangers for first place in the American League West. It's early, of course, and as we've been told many times, it is a rebuilding year. I won't mention how the Rockies or Giants are doing, but I'll say the Phillies are in second place in the National League East, just behind the Atlanta Braves. All right. We heard a lot of great facts about what's going on in the city of Seattle with all sorts of different aspects of this revitalization effort that all of our downtowns are facing and that are grabbing with both hands. The audience we have in this program, these are the people you're talking to today. They all care about downtown Seattle. Many of them are business owners or business people. They're retailers. They've been here at street level, experiencing everything we've been experiencing for the last 4 years and all the time before that as well. So what I want to do is talk to each of you initially about your cities to give us a status report, kind of give us the inside, talk to us marine to marine, as they would say, just to, you don't need to sugarcoat anything. We want to hear what's really going on. I think that'll make the conversation as interesting as possible for everyone. And as I was saying before we even got started, this is a big conversation. I figure out if we interrupt each other or we add stuff or stop each other and add to what everyone's saying, the more the better, the more lively the better. So feel free to interrupt me or interrupt your panelists or to add to the conversation. We've heard lots of talk about reinventing downtown. Downtowns are evolving. All these, the challenges and the opportunities been created by the last several years. So let's start alphabetically by city. I guess that would be Denver. Kourtny, give us the update. What's going on? What's working? What's not working? Give us the lowdown.
Thanks so much, Feliks. And I will say that we will be proud of our Nuggets and our Avs right now. And I'll identify with my Texas roots with the Rangers. So Rockies still a great ballpark to attend.
It's a rebuilding year.
Yeah, exactly. So, overall, I think there's a reason why you have these cities on the call. And I have the fortunate experience of shifting cities in a downtown management role during this post-pandemic, whatever place that we're in right now. And I can say with utter confidence from working with my colleagues and now working in 2 cities through this, that all of our challenges, the majority of our challenges are very much the same. Downtowns experienced an outsized impact of the pandemic and subsequent reverberation. And so we're all very much struggling with the same core issues. As I was listening to the priorities of the city's plan for downtown Seattle, hearing things related to safe and welcoming neighborhood, retail, work, arts, culture, sports, visitors, healthy, resilient, and green, I could almost echo that verbatim in our revitalization, reactivation, whatever terminology we're all using in those plans, because we know that fundamentally those are the elements of a great city. So here in Denver, as I've shared with my fellow panelists, I've stolen John Scull's terminology of we're living a moment of multiple truths, because I really think there's no better way to say that. Here in Denver, from a return to office standpoint, we're sitting at about 65% of our Monday through Friday traffic back. That spikes up to pre-pandemic levels in the evenings and weekends. So we've seen that tremendous shift between the daytime population driving our downtown economics to now our evenings and weekends, our residents and visitors. Our retail, we are seeing, depending on which subnode of downtown you're in, we're seeing anywhere between 10% and 40% vacancy rates. So again, moment of multiple truths there. We opened 27 new businesses along our signature spine of retail, which is the 16th Street Mall, for those who know it. We're opening businesses there. We have another dozen that are set to open just before the summer ends. So a lot of that positivity is happening. We're also losing a lot of our national retail. And we can get into some dialogue around the state of national retail, but we know that that's due to a number of factors, but places like TJ Maxx and McDonald's and some of those others, we've seen closures, but our local businesses are thriving. Our visitor traffic, our convention, all of that is definitely back to pre-pandemic levels. And overall, we are seeing literally day by day, moment by moment, that increase in foot traffic coming back. So it's still a very positive story until you start to talk about commercial office, where we have the true vulnerabilities. And again, it's depending on which part of downtown that you're in. Our vacancies range from about 18% on upwards of 50, 60%. So where we're concentrating a lot of efforts and revitalization strategies really depends upon the place in downtown in which you sit. Overall, again, though, I would say fundamentally, all of the challenges in cities across the country right now are very much the same, with some contextual differences in how it is fit for our community and what is the right solution to bring our downtowns back stronger than before.
Okay, and we'll come back to some of those specific issues and drill down a little bit on what's working and what's not working and where the challenges are. But let's go to Prema Gupta for an update on Philadelphia.
Great, happy to. And thank you for being here. Love Seattle. Am almost over my my PTSD from being part of the Amazon HQ2 process. And
we don't like to mention that around here. Okay, can we edit this out of the recording? No, just kidding.
Nor do we. But, and I'm also struck by the fact that, not only does your city government put out a Good News Downtown newsletter, it's featuring Shohei Ohtani. So we need to get Bryce Harper on board. I'll say this, 4 years out, I think that we sort of have internally decided that enough already with recovery. I think that we have all learned a huge amount over the last 4 years. And in certain cases, we are unexpectedly stronger than we were before. In some cases, we've exposed a lot of vulnerabilities in our downtown ecosystem. And in some cases, we're affected by sort of national systemic challenges. And it's time to sort of bucket those and proceed accordingly. Starting with the good. Our downtown residential population has increased over the last 4 years. In part, and it's depending on where you draw the lines, we have one of the largest downtown residential populations of any country in the city, of any city in the country. And that's only increased. And I think that that's helped our downtown, helped our businesses, helped our retail. And I think the challenge that we're having, quite frankly, is that we have been converting office buildings to residential over the last 25 years, and we're still trying to figure out, okay, how many more of those are suitable for conversion? I think with retail, I think Kourtny and I spoke a little bit about this in the preparation call, and looking forward to going to it before. I think there's this perception that our retail is doing horribly because a lot of national chains have sort of, again, made decisions across their portfolios to downsize their bricks and mortar footprints. again, not about downtowns, not about Philadelphia, a national phenomenon, but it's really affecting, it's really an interesting barometer on how people are feeling about the city. And we're seeing a lot of those spaces being backfilled by these digitally native brands that frankly care more about my teenager as a customer than me as a customer. And I think we're doing incredibly well there. And frankly, that's reflective of who's moving to downtown. Our downtown is young, affluent, and educated. And, I think our retail is increasingly reflect that. We'll talk about return to office, I'm sure, on this call. We don't see evidence of a plateau yet. We still see that number inching up. It's perhaps not where we'd want it to be, but we're feeling really good about that. And especially some of the leadership of big companies like Comcast, like Aramark, getting their folks back downtown and giving smaller companies and middle-sized companies, quite honestly, cover to do the same. But at the same time, trying to understand and interrogate what's holding people back, and what we can do to improve childcare, what we can do to think about commutes differently, eliminating friction to getting people back in town. So I think, in a snapshot, that's how we're starting to think about things. And I think, we're in a strong position, I think, because we started out with a very diversified downtown with residential population and office population and tourists. And I think that ecosystem has shifted a little bit over the last 4 years, and some of those changes may be permanent, but it's a balanced portfolio. So I think we're feeling pretty good about the way things are, understanding that there's still a lot of work to do.
Okay, very good. And we'll come back to a lot of those issues as we go through the conversation here. Rodney, in San Francisco, what's the status update?
Yeah, I'm so happy we're all on this call, because you could essentially copy paste everything that everyone's been saying, and I could do the same and go down the list. I think the importance of the call, and I hope you don't mind me being a little bit direct, is the national problems that we're facing of drugs, fentanyl, mental health, low education, emphasis on low education across the country is all hitting our cities. So I know San Francisco's gotten a bad rap, and you guys have seen, I think we've taken the brunt of a lot of it, but I think we're all experiencing very similar types of things with homelessness, mental health, and drugs in our bigger cities. So we've got to change that so that people come to cities not just for they used to come for jobs, and now they're coming for drugs, and I think we've got to shift that back. I'll be absolutely positive for the rest of my comments, but we're working hard on the recovery piece of San Francisco, similar kinds of things, thinking about how to re-engage retail, think things about bringing academia into the downtown, arts, culture, music, etc., a stadium for women's soccer in the downtown. This is something maybe a little bit unique related to daycare. We had voted on a tax to tax business about 5 years ago to put monies towards daycare. There's $300 million that are saved up in that account that have never been spent because they can't agree on how to spend it. We're now at a point where that tax is potentially being revoked, and so they do want to spend the money. And so we're looking at free daycare for any employer who spends 5 days a week in the downtown. So an incentive and we understand that that's one of the blocks that is blocking the return back to office. And so we want to try to mitigate that. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But, going through, we're being as aggressive as we can be, pointing out the real facts about the causes of all these cities, not just the local politics, but the bigger piece. We're going to send a group from the Chamber of Commerce to ICSC, the International Shopping Center Convention, was able to get some speaking time on one of the panels there to talk about where San Francisco truly is, where these big cities are, and to build confidence back in the brokerage community, but confidence back in the retail community to reinvest back into all of our cities. So I think all of us have to be super aggressive right now. I'm obviously born and raised in San Francisco, long-term bullish about our city, but we're celebrating the 4-year anniversary. It's going to take at least that amount of time or more to get back to where we're all used to.
I don't like to use that word celebrate, by the way. Just kidding. So Rodney, I mean, let's go back to you, because let's talk about public safety, because I think you mentioned this notion, this perception. And I think Markham McIntyre mentioned this as well. There's a perception issue with a lot of downtown, Seattle included, but there's also a reality around public safety issues, around police enough police officers, enough funding for public safety and that sort of thing, open air drug use, all those issues that were really super acute and super intensified during the pandemic. What's it going to take to get to a point in San Francisco where public safety isn't being misperceived outside the city or in areas where you're trying to attract regional or national or international tourists?
Yeah, well, I think we all have the same problem, in that it's really difficult to find people to recruit police officers at the moment. No one particularly wants that job in these larger cities, and so that's an issue. I think I know San Francisco is, and I know Seattle is, and Portland is. The politics are drastically changing. And if you get a chance to take a look at the results of the March election in San Francisco, and I was tracking Portland and Seattle's as well. My daughter lives up there. You're seeing a big switch, a big swing, a big shift. You're seeing a movement away from defund the police to fund the police. You're seeing a much more real estate long-term view investment of these cities than you had before, and the politics are starting to show. For San Francisco, very quickly, we had Chesa Boudin, who was the district attorney, who was very, very left. And at the same time, we had a slate of Board of Education board members that were very, very left, wanting to change and rename a bunch of things. And the communities in San Francisco, of which is 33% Asian, there's a social contract that, we'll pay taxes, but at the very least, we want good schools and public safety. And when that social contract was broken, that bear was poked, and they all became very engaged politically, which they hadn't before. They actually turned out to vote, which they hadn't really before. And so I think there's a big awakening here in San Francisco, which has been brewing for about 15 years, frankly. But no one was really sort of paying attention because we were all sort of fat and happy and could pay for all the woes of our cities. But I think COVID really sort of woke everybody up, and so that's shifting. And so I suspect in this November coming election, you're going to see some radical shifts in political direction, leadership at the council level, board of supervisors level, perhaps at the mayor level, and that's good and bad. These are a lot of people who are fired up, but don't necessarily have the experience to untangle something. We feel that there's great dysfunction in our city government, and you need to know a little bit about that and have a little bit of experience to untangle that bird's nest, I believe. So having someone that has zero government experience, there's a learning curve to that. I don't know if we have the time to have that person catch up to speed, but it'll be much about for that person, if they win the mayor office, to build a team around that has that experience and can guide us out of this.
And when you say the word radical shift, I mean, that means different things in different cities. We've had our experience with radical stuff in Seattle. We've seen similar political shifts here to a less radical, less progressive, more centrist, I guess. It's hard to exactly characterize. But I think we've seen a similar shift in Denver politically that's also contributed to the public safety issues and perception of public safety. Is that correct, Kourtny?
Yeah, and I think, from our standpoint with a recent mayoral shift, ours was in July, somewhat, I don't know that it was a shift in politics as it was a shift in action. And in this case, having someone come from outside municipal government has behooved us, because we have someone who is willing and able and bold enough to introduce some positive disruption. So essentially, when I arrived in Denver in January of 22, we were at a true peak of the crisis and really kind of separating the issues of public health with public safety and crime. And both of those were at this peak at the same time. So from a mental health and substance misuse manifesting itself very much so in the unhoused community, we were seeing encampments of sizes of historic nature. Then you kind of put at the same time, what we were experiencing here from a true crime perspective was a lot of gun violence, a lot of outcrowds from our nighttime entertainment venues, as well as a lot of the drug-related crimes were happening in downtown, and these headlines of shootings were happening on, quite frankly, a regular basis. So we put several efforts in place as much that were sort of this triage. And we would work with PD and we would work with our previous mayor, who was a fantastic partner, but a 3-term mayor, and certainly has been, I think, disencouraged by the last decade of a lot of the challenge and the political drama that's gone on. So fast forward, new mayor comes in, he's elected in July. Day 2 of his administration, he declared a state of emergency on homelessness, which then allowed all of our city resources to come together, activated the Emergency Operations Center, truly like a natural disaster. So you had multidisciplinary teams coming to the table to be able to address things like a rapid rehousing effort, to work with our police department, really all within this mantra of strong enforcement with compassionate response. And we have seen, with a big audacious goal to house 1,000 people by the end of 2023, mind you, again, July 2023 to the end of 2023. And collectively, we were able to house over 1,200 individuals, as well as make a really significant impact in seeing a lot of the gun-related crime and property crime as well take significant declines. So action, politics, yes, and action has been a good solution here.
And so has perception sort of followed the reality? Is it still an issue in terms of people thinking about what's going on downtown? I'm not going to go down there, that kind of thing, or talk about that? Oh
yeah, I mean, most certainly. If anyone who has not been downtown in the last year, 2 years, much less in the last 4, there's still definitely that suburban and metro-wide perception that downtown is dead and dangerous and not the place. You know, Denver's been known nationally for the last 20 years as having a very vibrant and exciting and market-driven downtown. So we're still seeing those headlines. We have a very concerted media relations effort going on right now. Frankly, people need to see it with their own eyes. And we won't let up on the media, but the most impactful difference that we have been able to make in perception is getting people downtown to go, oh, wow, and kind of have those moments where true awareness shifts to experience.
Have there been particular initiatives or public-private partnerships to get people downtown, or is it more just like free coupons or free parking? Or is there some secret sauce? I mean, do you just put them on a bus and make them go downtown, or what do you do?
No, I mean, Denver loves an event, more so than a lot of cities that I've worked in. So we have an activation and event-based strategy that is coupled with retail recruitment. I mean, again, you go through the priorities that you all have there in downtown Seattle, and I can almost mirror them exactly here. Event-driven, activation-driven. We're doing a lot around big moments. Union Station will actually celebrate its 10th anniversary. So Union Station redevelopment, I know a lot of cities are familiar. This is our multimodal hub that's been transformed with restaurants and just a true place to be. So we'll celebrate in a really big way that milestone. We just celebrated a 10-year anniversary of one of our major restaurateurs that has several locations in downtown Denver. So taking those moments that Denver knows and loves and really magnifying them has been another really effective strategy, because those are the things that the people who haven't been coming downtown in a while will come down to do, and then discover the 27 new businesses that opened last year along the way.
So it's a multi.
Felix, can I just jump in for a second?
Of course, yeah.
I think the return to office is one piece. In tourism, whether it's national, international, another piece. But what we're seeing in San Francisco, and I suspect you also are, is the media has really even gotten control of the people 10 miles away from the downtown, 5 miles away from the downtown. And for all of us, that's really our bread and butter, the sort of the day visitor out to celebrate an anniversary or whatever. And they've really been spooked off. And so the greater Bay Area, 9 million people, we need to try to change the narrative locally before we go and cast a different opinions around the world.
I totally agree with that. And I think one of the things that, like, I think we've all probably been thinking a little bit about is how people get their information. You know, we used to get our information from sort of a robust news media and, you know, trusted sources. And now we get information from networks and from social media and algorithms. And I think that, you know, when you see what I sort of say to people, which is probably the least sexy way of articulating it, is, you know, first of all, we know that in downtown Philadelphia, violent crime is down even against 2019 numbers. That's not the perception if you watch the news or you watch your aunt's Facebook postings. But right. You know, the other way I often say it is, so on a given day, between visitors, people working, residents, there are about 375,000 people downtown. There are less than 2, closer to 1 violent crimes per day. I like those odds. Those odds let me like send my teenager and her friends downtown to like enjoy themselves. So I think there's sort of some math, and then we need to put out the counteroffensive. So we talk a lot about how we have 85% of the pedestrian volumes that we did in 2019. And, question for you, Kourtny, for you, Rodney, like, what's the strategy moving forward? Are we trying to recapture those 15% who, again, may get their information from goofy places, maybe older, candidly, maybe more suburban? Or are we trying to find the next 15% who's younger and not deterred by some of this noise that's out there, quite frankly? The other issue that I think we're all grappling with, and I think you've both said this, and I'll say it a little bit of a different way, is again, that 15% and the folks like kind of adjacent to that 15% conflate crime with quality of life issues. We all have them. We all, and maybe if you've been working from home or sitting in your like affluent suburb, like you don't see the stuff that you might see walking around downtown. You don't see the people suffering. But, we say this to people all the time. Yes, you're going to see people in need. You're going to see people in crisis. They're not going to hurt you. You don't even need to cross the street. They're having their own crisis. And we as a society have failed them. That's a totally separate issue. But they're not affecting you, and you go about your business. And again, there is sort of that conflation of all these things and sort of disorder that we're up against as well.
I totally agree with those comments. And, there's unfortunately nothing illegal with someone having a moment and maybe screaming up in the air, but it is awfully scary from someone from Idaho who's just not used to that and is used to jumping on their jet ski that's parked in their trailer in front of their house. So I don't know why I made that analogy, but I pictured a suburban home. But I think your point about going after the new customer, there were always people who were doubters of big cities, afraid of them, afraid of the traffic, afraid of many people at one point. And I think we have to find that new customer. And frankly, I think it is youth. I think it is your daughter. And when she's thinking about going off to college, and San Francisco would love to have your daughter come to the University of San Francisco. And I think we're building a new population based on youth. So, there are a lot of people who, I'm repeating myself, but who called San Francisco the land of fruit and nuts. Why am I going to try to market my dollars, spend the dollars after them, who are probably never ever going to come, but still going to use X and Twitter and bash the city? So I'm moving on, and I appreciate that confirmation.
Yeah. Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about fentanyl for a moment. I mean, there's only it's crisis has been hitting almost every American community now for a long time. Anything in your particular communities that's working, or where you're seeing progress, or programs you've been able to support or be a part of that's making a visible difference for the people who need help, and that bigger difference beyond like the perception and everything? Anybody?
Well,
Go
ahead, Rodney.
Really quickly. So the city of San Francisco has been working with the state and the Drug Enforcement Agency federally. They have actually deployed quite a number of people into San Francisco to set up different operations. I actually just came back from a trip to China with the mayor of San Francisco, and fentanyl was actually a large talking point with Chinese officials on that side. They want to crack down on that as well. Many of the raw materials for the production of fentanyl come from China, but they're legal raw materials. So there's nothing illegal about it. The assemblage of them is happening elsewhere, but they're going to start to watch and help watch the movement of those raw materials out. So I think it's a global problem, an awfully scary one, and we've got to try to crack down on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people it's a global problem, but people want local action. They want people locally doing so. Kourtny, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, and by no stretch of the imagination is Denver out of the woods on this. I don't think any city is. But a few things that we started last year. One, from a policy perspective, Denver in 2019 decriminalized, like a lot of cities, all class 1 and class 2 narcotics. So we had a concerted effort with a number of partners and a coalition that went forward, and at least from the perspective of fentanyl, went through the process to elevate that offense again, which then enabled special operations, Rodney, much like you, just a doubling down on resources, particularly to target distribution and dealing. And then modeling somewhat after, Rodney, the care courts that have been such big news in the state of California, we have a bill that passed called Pathways to Care, which is really, I mean, quite frankly, and this is all happening at the state level, it's a long research project, but looking at models like what we see in California, Rhode Island has some of these programs that are really allowing for more flexibility to address those individuals who are a harm to themselves or potentially others in a way that a lot of cities aren't able to right now from kind of a human rights perspective. Things are continuing to help when we have those individuals who are addicted or who are having crisis on fentanyl to be able to intervene in a way that has not been politically palatable over the last, let's call it 3 or 4 years.
Okay. We don't have a lot of time left. I do want to, there's a lot more stuff I want to cover. In terms of retail, I was intrigued by this figure from Philadelphia where prior to the pandemic, your retail occupancy was around 89%, and now it's at 85%. And it seems like there must have been some magical secret program that you instituted that got everyone to come back, or what's the secret behind Philadelphia's success at getting almost back to what it was before?
Well, we were at 65% occupancy during the summer of 2020, and this is in terms of visible, like this is based on a staff survey of every ground floor space in our district. It's not like who's paying rent, because that's a difficult thing for us to track. It's just which storefronts look active and in use. The secret ingredient is our residential population. That's candidly what's driven it. We have, a couple of things, right? So I think we've got a downtown residential population. We have folks that have been around spending money over the last 4 years pretty consistently. It's a growing population. We also have this very sort of walkable Victorian grid. So as a result, a lot of our storefronts in our corridors are small. We don't have the big downtown. We have those in a different part of the area, but in our shopping in a different part of downtown, but in our shopping area, they're generally smaller retail stores along Walnut Street, if you know Philadelphia, which is kind of our great shopping street. And we are seeing a lot of the larger spaces remain vacant for longer. So I think that's something that's helped us as well. Again, getting these digitally native companies, the sort of Allbirds and the Warby Parkers and Bonobos and Gorhana, Alo Yoga. We just opened Viore, which is going to be really problematic for my credit card bills. But I think having a lot of these in these smaller formats and attracting those, I think has happened. And I wish, actually, I don't wish that we had a program. I love it when the market functions on its own.
And so subdividing, is there some future or potential for, if there are large spaces that remain unfilled, for subdividing in further creative ways to make it more like the Walnut Street stuff? Or
I think that's really hard. That just doesn't happen. I'll tell you, for example, we are moving our office into a retail space that was vacant for 4 years. It used to be a Tower Records, then it was an AC Moore craft shop, then it was, that awful, I shouldn't say that Halloween pop-up thing that's just really ugly. But, we were able to take advantage of that. Now we have a terrific ground floor space that our operations folks and our office folks can all be in. And it is a former retail space. So I wonder if we're going to see a little bit more of that, quite honestly, in some of the larger, different, creative, maybe that'll be my TED Talk. That'll be about converting old retail spaces, since we're all talking about converting old office spaces. I'm kidding, of course. But yeah, you know what I mean? I think that that sort of reinvention is alive and well.
And it seems like, I don't know, I haven't thought this through too much, but it seems like that more locally focused retail core is more pandemic resistant. If God forbid some other event strikes us, in our lifetimes, where, is a local business necessarily more resilient than a McDonald's, for instance? If it's I don't know, maybe that remains to be figured out more. I don't know.
This is anecdotal, but residents are emotionally attached and committed to keeping that one alive. So there was a conversation I'd had with a local bookstore here during the pandemic. And again, I was in the office when shutdowns were in full force. They allowed you to order things and pick up from them, which, I did. And I did very liberally, because I'm like, oh my God, the independent bookstore, they need to stay alive. And at one point, I called in an order and I said, how's it going? Oh my gosh, are you guys okay? And the woman's like, don't tell anyone this, but we're doing better than ever. And it's because of people like me and, people that have this sort of a loyalty to these smaller businesses, which I think you saw a lot of with restaurants and independent retailers, I think in downtowns, in neighborhoods everywhere. which, to your point, Felix, probably isn't going to happen. And I don't think anyone is as determined to keep the local McDonald's open. That we love McDonald's, and we're grateful for their
A lot of them are
business
locally
in
owned too. I mean,
downtown.
it's not. Yeah. In
100%.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Prema, did you see any correlation to small business and ownership of the property versus big box and being tenants of the property and being able to dip out?
Great question.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna look into that. I think that's a fascinating question. I mean, certainly among the businesses that have been there for a really long time, probably own their businesses. I think there's definitely been some of that. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but that's an intriguing question that I'm gonna look into.
In keeping with the retail theme, I wanted to ask Kourtny about big plans for the 16th Street Mall and how those were affected by what went on during the pandemic. But before that, some of the more recent shifts in just the structure of retail hours, because activities are shifting to nighttime more than daytime, more than instead of just the office workers during the day buying a sandwich or going to a dry cleaner. There's people are occupying downtown spaces at night more so than they did compared to the day. Is that true in Denver? And did that have impact on what the plans are for 16th Street and how those are rolling out?
And again, I mean, it depends on which area of Denver you sit. Particularly for those who know Denver, predominantly we have what's called lower downtown and we have upper downtown. And lower downtown is where Union Station is located. It's where we saw some of our 90s adaptive reuse of the, pre-1960s era architecture, like those really cool hotels and really authentic bones, a lot more retail, a lot more restaurant. So we've seen a lot more resiliency in that neighborhood versus upper downtown, which has been truly the commercial office center, the trophy towers, pretty void of retail, pretty void of residential. So the businesses, particularly in upper downtown, that were reliant on that lunchtime traffic are those that we have seen, local or national. We've seen the greatest strain. So we've been doing a lot of business coaching around rethinking your business model, how to market, how to shift to really meet the demands. I mean, Fridays to me here are so fascinating because we see from about 8 a.m. to noon, the bottom of our return to office bell curve. At, call it, depending on the week, anywhere between 30, 40, 50% of return to office traffic back. But then our pedestrian traffic post noon, as you get into the happy hour, starts to tick back up because people are coming back out, they're starting their weekend, maybe they're wrapping up the workday with a beer on a patio. You see a little bit more of that socializing start. So we're just really coaching our businesses to be able to look at the changing behavior. And it's not just about demographics anymore. It's about psychographics. It's about behavior patterns and trends. And you can't just, kind of count on your business person 5 days a week, 8 to 5 to populate your business. So there is definitely that phenomenon here. And then, of course, with the rebirth of 16th Street Mall, we have another tremendous opportunity here, and I can chat about that as much as you want.
We have just a couple minutes left. I wanted to at least address if there's any, you mentioned return to office and kind of this, I don't think we want to use the phrase new normal. I think we said the other day we wouldn't use the phrase new normal, but are there other things going on in Philadelphia or San Francisco where there's sort of this acceptance of return to office, the levels we've seen so far? Is there going to be any further push? Is there secret sauce? Is there something that initiatives that still could be attempted in terms of public-private partnerships or more events and things like that? Or what experiences have you had so far, and what do you guys have planned in the immediate future? And that's probably going to be kind of my last question for everybody here today. Is given everything we talked about today, given the great context we had from Mark and McIntyre about what's going on in Seattle, what's going to be the focus for the next 6 months, 12 months in terms of the next step of revitalization of whatever that looks like? And why don't we start with you, Rodney?
Yeah, I think all the things that we've talked about, events, music, and evening events, food-related things. Food's actually taking off more than retail, and we're seeing some great successes there. So, I maybe I just want to pause for a second. Everyone in these spaces in every city is working incredibly hard, and there is not one secret sauce. There's not one magic bullet, silver bullet. It'll take 1,000 cuts to kind of bring it all back. And we are changing the social pattern, which is very, very difficult to do, as you mentioned earlier. Someone in this call mentioned earlier. So we'll keep going away. I can go down a whole list of things, but they're very similar to what everyone else is doing here.
And how about you, Prema?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I think we've covered a lot of it here. I think that, I think we're all heartened by the fact that we have mayors and mayoral staffs that are focused on the basics, clean, safe, like municipal service delivery excellence, so that as we sort of market and, tell great stories about reasons why people should come downtown, it's sort of operationally backed up by like both our teams and also by city government. It's, we're telling a valid story of progress, and we have partners to do that. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the last is I think it's incumbent on all of us to like tell facts and, put forth great images of things going on downtown, because, while downtown may continue to not be particularly compelling to like the, 55-year-old soccer mom who like just, would rather just eat at the, nice suburban, nice.
Apologies to all our soccer moms tuned in today, by the way. Sorry.
I'm a soccer mom. But I think, no, but in all seriousness, like, I think, some people would rather not, fine. But like, let's let them know what we're missing. And like, cities, I think we're all in this line of work because we believe in cities, both their economic potential, but also their social potential and frankly, the magic of them. So let's continue to put out those images out in the world, and like get people who want to be back.
Wonder, and we'll give you the last word, Kourtny.
Absolutely. Well, I'll echo where Seattle is right now with the focus on neighborhood, which, by the way, is not necessarily new in the pandemic area. I think all of us were really striving in that direction for our downtowns and have been for the last 20 years. In essence, neighborhood strategies beget strong economic development. That's what draws employees back. That's what draws jobs. So it's a wonderful cyclical strategy to move forward. For us, that is public-private partnerships, big investments, bold moves. You call them the Space Needle moves. We're thinking in the same way. Here it's the Union Station scale of moves, and everyday activation, ensuring that when people do come back downtown, or our residents are here, or those who are still working here have a really positive experience block by block, day by day.
Very good. All right, I want to thank our panelists, Rodney Fong from San Francisco, Kourtny Garrett from Denver, and Prema Gupta from Philadelphia. I want to thank the Office of Economic Development Director Markham McIntyre and Garrett Axelrod of Amazon, and Amazon for supporting the series. Thank everyone for joining us today for this edition of DSA Virtual Access. I want to thank the fabulous DSA staff. Please mark your calendar for the next installment. It'll be on Thursday, May 16th. We'll be talking with new members of the Seattle City Council. Watch your inbox for more information on that. Seattle International Film Festival is coming up. Be sure and take part in as many screenings as you can. Until then, I'm Feliks Banel on behalf of DSA, and thanks again for joining us this morning, and we will see you downtown.